So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to spend a few minutes and look at making a Google Sheet or a spreadsheet to help us do some lab calculations. At this point, you should already know how to do the heat of solution calculation and use Q equals MC delta T to figure out the joules per mole of a solute. This video is really just about spending some time looking at the spreadsheet and how to make it. This is the final product that you're going to end up with. I have some aesthetic things done here. I've colored some of the cells red or blue just to kind of have a different meaning, which we'll talk about later. But this is what we're going for. We're looking for basically a spreadsheet that shows your data table, and then what's really happening here is that anything that's blue is data that was input after being collected into the lab. Anything that's in red are calculations that are happening on their own automatically once you drag the cells down. This is a really useful skill. We can use spreadsheets to do tons of things, from obviously lab data analysis, but obviously graphs. We can use them to make some nice graphs, but even personal things like personal finance things are all useful in spreadsheets. So that's kind of the idea here. We're looking at taking, looking at this lab information and adding in some spreadsheet understanding as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make this spreadsheet, and I'll take you through it step by step. At a couple points, I'll probably tell you to pause the video and input some stuff. That's fine. You should do that then. That way you don't fall behind. If you keep up and just kind of go along at the pace of the video, you should be fine. So let's hop in. So remember, this is where we're going to end up with. So let's talk to you for a minute about how to make that, how to get to that point. So if I want to make this spreadsheet, right, the first thing you should notice is that I have all these headings, right? I've basically created the data table from the lab here. So how we will do that is you're just going to go over to your blank spreadsheet here. This is what you should have on your screen, and start typing in the different parts of your data table into these cells. So this grid system is each of these little boxes that I've clicked on here is a cell. It works in a grid system, and they have a location. So we've got lettered columns across the top here, and we've got numbered rows down the side. So this cell that I've clicked in here is cell C6. We can put multiple types of things into a cell. We can type into it, and we can put some words in it, poorly spelled and poorly capitalized. We can also put numbers into it, no problem. If we wanted to, we could even put an equation into it. We could ask this cell to do some math and take 10 and add 7 to it, and it will pop up with 17. That's actually the really important function that we use back here in these red cells to do some quick math and process a lot of data very easily. So what we should do is kind of the first thing you need to focus on is typing up your data table, so that from your lab, kind of like I've done here, into your blank spreadsheet. So for example, what did I do? I left this A1 blank, and then under A down from 2 till 10, I typed in my solutes here. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to type in the formula for calcium chloride. I'm actually going to do it 3 times. Remember, that's because we did 3 trials of calcium chloride, and then I'll come in here and do ammonium chloride, and then obviously NaCl next. There's some faster ways to do this. There's some shortcuts around Google and things like that. If you know how to use those, you're welcome to jump ahead. I'm kind of doing this video a little bit more slowly, just for people that aren't as familiar. What's next? I've got trial. So I'd come over and do trial. We did 3 trials of each, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. One thing that you're probably noticing is that as I'm typing them in, it's not quite as aesthetically pleasing as my finished spreadsheet here. So I'll show you how to do some of those modifications. So first of all, you see how some of my things are offset to the left and then to the right of the cell. I'm going to put everything centered in the middle of each cell by clicking up in this box up here. See how there's this little square box up here where my mouse is? If you click right there, you've selected everything, and I want to center everything. So I'm going to go up to my Align tab here and pick the middle one, do it again, so that everything is nice and centered. I've also made the font a little bit bigger. We can do that up here in the same kind of idea, right? We could make all of the font a little bit bigger. We could make just certain chunks of it a little bit bigger. Maybe I want to keep these numbers small for whatever reason. Make those a little smaller, make them real small. Right, that's a little silly. I've also done some colorations. I'm just doing that by selecting the cells and clicking on my fill button here. A little paint can is what I used to call it. And then I'm picking a light red. And again, if you missed it back here, on my finished product, I just used red and blue. Red to indicate cells that I should not touch and should never put numbers into. And blue is cells that I might be changing the numbers around a lot. These are all really equations, these red cells. These blue cells are more cells that I had to input. So you can kind of play with it as you will and make it look like what you would like to. The only thing I'm going to caution you on, please stay with the light numbers because I'm going to ask you to print this when you're all done. So now's a great time for you to pause the video and take a few minutes. And really what I just need you to do is set up the spreadsheet that is on your data table, exactly as you'll see it. Oops, ignore what I just did there. Once you get it set up, we'll kind of reconvene and then we'll go from there. All right, good luck. Let me know if you have any issues and we'll come back in. All right, so you should have paused the video and you should have something like what I have in front of me. Again, this is very black and white. It's very complicated for me to kind of see what I'm supposed to be using here and where I'm supposed to be filling things in. So I'm going to do some things to pretty it up. The first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete the excess columns because they're kind of bugging me, right? You know, so look at how big my spreadsheet is. I don't need all that. And I don't need all of this, all of these rows. So this is a little bit of an OCD thing about me, but I do not like extra columns. So I'm just going to normal click on the M, scroll over all the way, shift click, did that wrong. That's what I get. Normal click on the M, scroll over, shift click on the Z. Now I've selected all of those columns that I don't need anymore, and I'm going to delete them just to make this a little prettier. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to click on my 11th row, scroll all the way down, click on my 1000th row. Now I've selected them all. I'm going to right click and delete, right? In case I didn't say that before, I right clicked on those highlighted rows. You don't actually need to do that. I just like to work in a smaller space. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my colorations in. So places, ignore that. Things where I am not changing the values, I'm going to shade red. Notice how I'm doing this. I can actually click up here on the letter or on the row and select that entire set of information. That makes this very easy to do. And actually all of these need to end up red, right? That's my final product. So I'm going to go here and select H, I, J, and K just by clicking and dragging over them. I'm going to come up to my fill bucket and fill with this light red that I've been using. Now remember, these starred columns, mass of solute, mass of water, initial temp of the water, and final temp of the water, these were columns that I had to measure data for in the lab, right? You should have data in all of these spots. So this is a place where I'm going to have to input some information. So just to kind of keep my head straight, I'm going to go here and turn this nice light blue, so it's easy for me to see. So now you've done that. The next thing you really want to think about doing, again, we're going to be doing a lot of math here. You need to take a second and input all of your numbers from the lab into these boxes, right? So you should have 3 trials of CaCl2, 3 trials of NH4Cl, and 3 trials of NaCl. You should have masses of solutes, masses of water, initial temperature of the water, and final temperature of the water. So take a few minutes, pause your video, and you just want to be inputting your data. So for example, you're supposed to have about 2 grams of calcium chloride. So I'm making up a number here. Maybe we had 2.14 grams of calcium chloride in that first trial. I'm just going to click into that box. In case you missed it, I'll do it again. Right, just going to double click into that box. My little marker here comes up, means I can type. And I'm typing 2.14. It's very important that you don't put anything else into the column. That the program needs to know that C2 has a number in it. If I do something like 2.14 grams, it's not going to understand what that means anymore. That's why my grams is up here in my mass of my solute. So 2.14, right? I'd go ahead and do the same thing for water. Say for my water, I had, 23.78 grams of water. say I measured my initial temperature. Well, it was about room temperature, so we'll say it was 21.2 degrees Celsius. And final temp, let's say it went all the way up to 29.7. Right? Again, these are made up numbers. I made these up on the spot just to make a point. You need to take your data and plug in your actual numbers in for all of your trials. So take a minute and do that. All right, so you should be unpausing the video after punching all your data in, kind of like I've done here. Again, remember, these are just made up numbers, so they don't really need to reflect your numbers. They don't need to be the same. But you should have gone ahead and punched in your numbers, so you should have something that looks like this. So now remember, we already know how to do the calculation. We know how to use Q equals MC delta T to figure out this stuff. We're just going to, instead of doing it all out by hand for all 9 trials, we're going to do it in the spreadsheet, and it will make our lives a lot easier, you'll see. So remember, in finding Q equals MC delta T, remember delta T is your change in temperature, so that's this column H here that I've highlighted. In finding your change in your temperature, your easy, simple, and kind of structured way to do it is to subtract your final temperature, take your final temperature and subtract your initial temperature. So what I want to do is I want to do that in this cell. Instead of just punching in, so this is not what you should do, but instead of coming along here and typing equals 29.7 minus 21.2, that'll get you the answer, but why would you do it like that, right? That only works for one set of data. It's just using it as a big calculator. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to tell the program, we're going to tell Google Sheets to not put in specific numbers, but take numbers from other parts of the spreadsheet. So to figure out change in temperature, I want to take final temperature and subtract initial. So all I did here, I'll go back, I'll show you from the beginning. Sorry, I'm spazzing out here. All I did here was I clicked to type into my box, pressed an equal sign. Anytime you type an equal sign into a cell, that means that this thing is going to be ready to do some math. Cell H2, which I'm in right now, is going to want to do some math. And instead of typing in the actual numbers, I'm going to type in where it should look to find the numbers. Or you can even just click on it. I'll show you how to click on it first. So I'm just going to click on G2, my final temperature. There it is. See how it pops up as G2 now. It pops up with a little note here that says G2 is 29.7. But what it's really doing is it's saying, okay, well, we're going to go G2, and then we're going to do something with whatever number is there. If I change that number later that's in G2, this cell will also change. And then we'll go G2 minus, and then let's type this one in instead. I'll just type in the letters and then the row number for the cell location. So I'll type in F2, and it's showing me what this cell will equal, right? 29.7 minus 21.2 is going to equal 8.5. So when I click that, now it's doing the math. But here's the important part. It's not just doing the math for this. It is doing the math of 29.7 minus 21.2, but it's actually doing it off of location. If I were to come in back here and change this to 100, the final temperature, notice how it changes the number over here. It's not doing the math with the numbers that are there. It's doing the math off of the location. What did I have here? 29.5. Go back to the way it was. The reason why this is useful is because if I come over to this little box and click on it, so just to show you what I'm doing again here, notice how I've clicked into my cell H2. You've got this blue perimeter, and then there's this small little square in the bottom. If you click on that square and then drag it down, what the sheet just did was it took the equation that I put into box H2, and it kept running the same equation, but for that box, right? So let's actually get rid of it so I can show it to you a little bit more slowly. Let's just go down one box now. I've dropped it down one box, and now what it's doing is in H3, it's taking G3 and subtracting F3. Just like how up here in H2, it took G2 and subtracted F2, that will keep happening the whole way down. So I'm actually going to come up and drag it all the way down, and I've just figured out my change in temperatures for all 9 trials, and it happened pretty quick. We're going to use the same idea of inputting an equation and telling the cell what position, or telling the program what position to find the number in, instead of putting the actual numbers in it. So we'll move a little bit quicker now. But why don't you do this actually? Take a minute, pause your video, and see if you can get this change in temperature thing to work right? So push the equal sign, type in your equation or click on the boxes, see if you can get it to work, see if you can get it to drag all the way down. Take a minute, pause the video. If you can't get it, ask me. So hopefully you're able to get that, assuming you were. Let's move ahead. So remember, the next thing that we did after we found our change in temperature is we used it in the equation Q equals M times C times delta T to find the energy of the water. So we're going to do the same idea that we did with our change in temperature boxes in this I row column, energy change of water. Remember what the equation is? The equation was Q is what we're trying to find. So that's what's going to show up in this box is Q. That's good. Equals, and then we need the mass of the water. So I'm going to click over here and take D2. And it was Q equals M times C, which is our specific heat capacity. So let's click in E2. Notice how it does different colors. That's a nice touch. Your orange box, dotted box here is an orange D2. Your purple dotted box here is a purple E2 over here. So it was Q equals M, that was D2, times C, that was E2, times delta T, which we just figured out was H2. So we'll come here and we'll hit times H2. Little thing that I don't want to overlook here, you have to type in asterisks as multiplication signs. So if you don't know where that is, Shift 8 gives you that asterisk. If you do that, it's doing multiplication. So it's going to multiply D2 times E2 times H2. That's fantastic because we want it to take the mass of the water times the specific heat of the water times the temperature change of the water. If you push equals, there's your numbers. Again, we can drag it all the way down, and we've done our math. We found our energy change of our water the whole way through our experiment. Our energy change of our solution, remember that this value is always the opposite sign of whatever our energy change of the water was, right? In our first trial of calcium chloride here, we've shown that 825 joules of energy was gained by the water. And we said that the only way that the water can gain that much energy is if the solute lost it. So we have to flip our signs here. So I'm actually going to take this and just pop in a negative and then click on that box here. So I'm going to take the opposite of whatever is in our energy change of the water, press enter, and then if I drag it down, I should see we have some nice sign flips, right? All of our signs have flipped, nothing else has happened. That's good. Our moles of solute, remember we need to get to this point of finding the heat of solution of the solute. So let's get there by, we're going to need moles of solute to do that. Let's actually do something to your spreadsheet to make this a little bit easier to do. Remember how we're going to find moles. We're going to take grams of solute and divide by molar mass. Well, I don't have molar mass on my spreadsheet, so let's add it in. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to come up and right click on my K. And when I do, I get this little drop down menu, and I'm going to insert a column to the left of my moles of solute column. Right? I had actually already had that done on the finished product. You probably just missed it. It was right over here. So when I come back to my my working spreadsheet here, I'll give this new column a title. I'll call it molar mass. Right? And if in case you missed it, the molar mass of calcium chloride is 110.98. That's actually going to be the same all the way through, but we'll put that in a second for calcium chloride. So to get moles, what do? Use Google to do some math for us. Moles of solute, we'll take the mass of the solute, C2, way over there. We'll divide it by the molar mass of 110. And we'll push equals. There's my moles of my solute, right? What you should do now is take a second, input your molar masses. Remember, your substance is changing. The first 3 trials were calcium chloride, then ammonium chloride, then sodium chloride. So pause your video, input your molar masses into their respective places. So I'll finish calcium chloride off just to make it obvious what you should do. Right? And then after you've input your molar masses, do what you should do, or what you would think to do. Go over to your moles of solute and drag that equation down. Take a second, pause your video, and then we'll be back. So if you're all caught up, you are in this kind of a position, right? You've added your molar mass column in to the left of your moles of solute column. You've typed in your molar mass of each of these substances into the space in the spreadsheet. Again, this is something that if you're pretty advanced at this and you know what you're doing and you're really comfortable, there's some different ways to go about doing this that are actually a little bit more efficient, but this is a good starting point is what I'm getting at. So now we've added our molar mass column. We put our grams to mole equation, right? Grams divided by molar mass gives you moles. And I've dragged that down and I've calculated the moles of each of my things, each of my substances used in every trial all the way down with just the click of a couple buttons. The last thing to do is to find my heat of solution in joules per mole of my solute. This is actually pretty straightforward. We're going to use the math equation again. What do I want to do to find heat of solution? I want to divide the total number of energy change of the solute, and I want to divide it by the number of moles. So I'm going to press equals into my column M2. I'm going to click on my J2. That's my energy change of my solute. I'm just going to tell Google to divide that by the number of moles that I put in, which is in L2. Press equals, and we've done our math out. This is a correct number for my data. Again, your numbers will be pretty different. Drag it all the way down, and now you finish your spreadsheet. So you've finished your spreadsheet. You've hopefully learned a little bit about Google and about how helpful spreadsheets can be in doing some math. And all you really need to do here is now print out this data table and attach it to your lab just to show that you've done it, and then you'll be good to go. Nice work.